Welcome to American Players Theater Talkbacks to Go. I'm Buzz Kemper, and I invite you to take a walk up the hill with Orange Schroeder and me as Orange chats with director William Brown and actor Marcus Truschinski about APT's production of Travesties by Tom Stoppard.
We're talking about Travesties by Tom Stoppard, and I have with me William Brown, who is directing the play, and Marcus Truschinski, who is playing Henry Carr. And I wanted to start by asking Bill about the first time he saw this play, which was written in 1974 and debuted on Broadway the next year.
That's exactly when I saw it. I was still in school, so to protect the innocent. But it was the very first show I ever saw on Broadway. And I had traveled to New York City from West Virginia, where I was born and raised. And I don't think anyone dumber ever left West Virginia. And here I went to see this play that is very smart and very funny. And it uses the importance of being earnest as a kind of template over and over again as a device. I'd never even seen the importance of being earnest. And yet, I was dazzled. I never forgot it. I remember laughing. I remember being impressed and moved and awed. It remains not quite like any other play I know.
And that, I assume, is in part because of Stoppard's language and wit.
Yes, yeah. It hangs on a very simple premise. At one moment, a true premise, at one moment in 1917, in the middle of World War I, Lenin, Tristan Tzara, who was one of the founders of the Dada movement, and James Joyce were all in Zurich, Switzerland, peaceful Zurich, Switzerland, with, if I may say so, Marcus, a second-rate bureaucrat named Henry Carr. And
second rate. He doesn't see it that way.
No, he doesn't see it that way at all. But James Joyce asked Henry Carr to be in a production of The Importance of Being Earnest, an amateur production. Neither felt that they were treated fairly. Both went to the courts to sue each other after the production. That's about all we know. Tom Stoppard takes all that, throws it up in the air, and dazzles us. And
you mentioned that you had never seen Importance of Being Earnest, which I'm sure some of the audience members also haven't. Do you think it's important to know anything about that play?
Well, we're hoping, since it's up the hill running and it's in a much bigger space, that everyone will have the opportunity to see Ernest before they see Travesties. But no, I mean, it stands on its own. You will infer by certain devices that something is being parodied, something is being used as a device, but you will still have a ball because it remains brilliant, witty, sharp, moving on its own.
And Marcus, tell us about the character Henry Carr, and also what part did Henry play in The Importance of Being Earnest back in Zurich?
He played Algernon, which I also happen to be doing in The Importance of Being Earnest up the hill.
Not a total coincidence.
Not a total coincidence, but a brilliant bit of casting on William Brown's part.
Thanks.
So the wonderful thing about that is we get to, completely form the idea of what The Importance of Being Earnest is to this play beforehand. So it's a real play, it's going on, and then when we get to come down the hill to do that, when I get to do that character, I already have all these ideas of what the ideas are, the blocking, and which way we're going with the character. So it's exciting.
And tell us about the other parallels between the two productions in terms of set design and casting.
Well, the roles of Algernon, Jack, Cecily, Gwendolyn, the four young leads, are all in Travesties as well. The costume designer is the same. We have moved The Importance of Being Earnest up to 1913, right before the war. So 4 years later, Travesties takes place, and you'll see the same sort of clothes, only the hemlines are up a few inches. Sound is the same. We're using ragtime music. And we have two different set designers, but they have worked so beautifully together. Nate Stuber and Kevin Deponette, individuals, artists, and yet they've had so much fun riffing off of each other. In Ernest, there's an enormous Dada painting that is the centerpiece of Algernon's apartment. That becomes the set itself in Travesties. So it's been a wonderful conversation between the designers, and in the very first week of rehearsals for Ernest, we did a reading of Travesties. So I think it's fair to say that it became a conversation for the actors as well, doing both these plays at the same time. Is that true?
Yeah, the great thing was doing that reading the first week of rehearsals, because it gave us an idea of not only to make sure we were keeping that play in mind, but to make sure we're taking care of both plays and both characters, and it's all of a piece right now, which I think it's really exciting for an actor, because you're doing two plays here at APT at the beginning of the season anyway, but once the second half of the season begins, it's almost, you kind of forget about that play for a couple months while you're working really, really hard on these two plays, but this made it really, really fresh and permanent in our minds, I think.
And Bill, you mentioned the Dada movement, which is certainly not as well known as the importance of being earnest, for instance. What do audiences need to know about Dada?
Well, it's funny. What's the band? Chumbawamba? Chumbawamba calls themselves a Dada band. I mean, Dada is still with us. If you've ever seen performance art, that's Dada. Matt Schwader, who plays Tristan Zara and Jack, when he was in school, they did a Dada event. They told everybody there was going to be a parade, and there was going to be, and then they found a way to irritate everyone. Surrealism. A lot of modern art is a result of a group of art, Satie, a certain amount of French, turn-of-the-century French or early 20th century French music, is a result of people. It really came out of World War I to some extent, because they looked around at the carnage and said, what the hell does art mean? What does it matter? So they called themselves anti-art. But it was a way of busting through centuries of what art is supposed to be. So I think it's actually more familiar. We don't call it Dada anymore, but it certainly was the forerunner of a lot we know now.
We'll certainly learn a lot about the history of that, too. In the play, they talk a lot about it and the arguments that the main characters have about art and what art stands for. And Henry Carr has a passage about how art is only there to beautify existence. And each character has their own slogan for what it actually stands for. Right. It's really quite interesting. But I don't think you have to go in with a foreknowledge of Dada at all. It's actually almost more fun, because I didn't know a lot about it, and in researching it and through the play, it's really fun to learn about.
It's so much. A lot of people. This was a play I wanted to do, and a lot of people when they first read it were like, "Oh my gosh, are you kidding?" But it's not the same when you see it or even hear it. You may not know anything about Dada, but by the end of the evening, you'll understand the point of it. So. I wouldn't recommend that anyone read it before they come. Just come and experience it.
And I know that APT has a love of Stoppard and the audiences as well, because of the cleverness of the language.
It's in a direct line from the social comedies of Shakespeare, Sheridan, Congreve, Wilde, Coward, Shaw, Stoppard. I mean, it's of a piece.
And how would you draw a line between last year's Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead and this year's Travesties?
Well, that was, it was so much fun. I actually was in the audience one night at Hamlet when clearly the people had seen Rosencrantz and Guildenstern before. So when the two minor characters of Rosencrantz and Guildenstern came on stage, they got applause.
I don't think Shakespeare intended that.
I don't think
and those
he
two
did.
guys, Ryan and Steve, were just so embarrassed. They're so mortified. They're like, "Oh no, not in this play."
But it clearly, our audiences are very smart. And clearly, they are enjoying the dramaturgy of that. And I think this year, what's different this year is there's one director. So in a way, I can wrangle it a little more. And in point of fact, one's up the hill and one's down the hill. So there's another kind of conversation.
But it doesn't depend on the importance of being in earnest in the same way that Rosencrantz and Guildenstern depended on Hamlet, does it?
I don't think so. But like I said, how many of those people saw, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern? Now, maybe everyone who comes to theater at APT has seen Hamlet, but one never knows.
And there's a silly side to this play as well, isn't it? I mean, it's not all didactic dada.
Oh, no. It's outrageously. Go ahead.
It's so much fun. There, at the beginning of the play, there is a scene where all of the characters enter at the same time, and then they all speak in limericks, to the point where, each person has a line to form a perfect limerick, and you get all the information from the play out of that scene somehow. It's so much fun.
There's a vaudeville number.
The Gallagher and Shear.
Yeah, Mr. Gallagher. Gallagher and Sheen. They do a spin-off of that. There's a striptease.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, a striptease. That's something we don't often see at APT.
That's right.
Well, not enough. We don't see them
we don't
enough.
see enough of that.
And do you think that Henry Carr fit in with these artist types that he was hanging out with in the play?
In his mind, he did, very much so. But I think a lot of these relationships he has built over time in his imagination. There's a passage in the play as well where they talk about how he didn't actually know any of these characters, but over time, it's told from his point of view as he's about an 80-year-old man reminiscing on this time period, and it's all kind of blended in together with his version of the play, Importance of Being Earnest, which he can't remember the name of the character he played. He always says, "It's Ernest." Oh, no, it's the other one. It's the other one, whatever his name is. And he has built this memory over time that it's really quite glorious. And it's the future he's not the future, but the past he has created for himself, which is beautiful and fun and.
And is Stoppard coming at it from a love of Oscar Wilde?
Oh, he must have. He must see himself in that line. And it's a play about three revolutionaries and Henry Carr. and you could really argue that in many ways Wilde was a revolutionary. So there's a beautiful connection.
And I know that those that are lucky enough to get to see Travesties will get so much more out of both plays. It's been the hot ticket this year at APT, so
that's what I hear.
I am very much looking forward to seeing it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Talkbacks to Go is a production of Orange Tree Imports, Pro Video and Film, and Audio for the Arts. Your host is Oren Schroeder. I'm Buzz Kemper. Our music is by Steve Tibbetts and is used by permission of the artist. Please find us on iTunes and YouTube under APT Talkbacks to Go. Thank you for listening.